To get started with our IPv4 transfer experience panel, I have Sandra Brown from the IPv4 Market Group.
Thank you to ARIN and to David Huberman for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. I just have a couple of slides, and I don't so much want to talk to all of my content because these are slides I've had from other engagements, but I wanted to make a few points specific to the topic at hand and then leave the slides with you so that you'll have some extra content if you want to refer to them in the future. So first of all, I wanted to give you some information on the purchase process. Just a couple points I wanted to make here. First, when buyers come to us, we encourage buyers to get free IPs from ARIN before they make a purchase. And so if you're thinking about the process, the purchase process, the point is, do you want a 3-month supply and go back to the well with ARIN every 3 months, or do you want a 24-month supply from the transfer market so that you don't have to keep going back to the well? So that's the idea behind free and having to go back 8 times as often, or going back once every 24 months. Second point is it's good to get help to do the ARIN justification, especially if you don't have a lot of internal expertise at the process. You know, if you're a big shop like Mr. Huberman's here, you'll obviously know how to do it. But if you're a smaller shop and you don't do it very often, then get some help. And that's something we can bring to the table as a broker, is to get you some help so that you don't have to struggle with the many questions that ARIN asks that are very difficult to answer in some cases. The other point to make there, of course, is that when you do apply for IPs, your existing blocks have to be 80% used, and that's every block, not the aggregate of the blocks, and that's been a discussion point within ARIN for some time. And then you have to show how the IPs are going to be used, and that's can be very difficult, and that's something that specifically the assistance we give will get you through. The next point is that compliments to ARIN. The ARIN pre-approval process has gotten much more streamlined than it used to be. And it's good to get pre-approved and not, I think someone made this comment yesterday during the meeting, it's good to get pre-approved and not say, okay, I want to buy, you know, this company's /16 block, line up with the seller, and then find out, oh, you're only pre-approved for a /17, and find your commercial process has gone astray. So therefore, get pre-approved, learn what size block you're approved for, and then get lined up for your commercial process. Okay, so those are the points I wanted to make on this slide. And taking you to my next slide, just one point I wanted to make here, and there's some information here about what due diligence a buyer should go through, and I want mostly for you to take this away with you. And the point I wanted to make verbally is that we recommend you check the IPs for blacklisting, and secondly for blocking. And a lot of people don't think about blocking because it's not very visible. So what we recommend is, if you're going to use the IPs for functions such as email, even internal email, then make sure that you check that you can, by testing the IP specifically for email, that you can actually email on them by pre-testing. And my last slide is on negotiation points to deal with between buyer and seller. And again, I want to leave most of these points with you. So our experience as a broker is that we've never found auctions to be successful. So the main reason for this is that buyers don't like to compete for the same block. So you'll find that as a seller, you want to list your block and you say, oh, you know, put my block up for auction, and you can't go to a bunch of buyers and they just don't want to compete for the same block. They'll say, well, find me a different block. Because right now, to be honest, within ARIN region, there are more sellers than buyers. Second point I'd like to make is that we recommend payment via escrow. And it's probably a little bit because IPs are a fairly new asset in terms of buy-sell. And it gives the buyer some comfort that they're going to get the IPs when they pay for them. And it gives the seller some comfort that they're going to get their money without losing the asset. last point I wanted to make verbally is that buyers often only look at the price. So they say, I'm going to get these for a certain price. Price is all that really matters to me. But there's other factors you really got to be conscious of. IP quality, the efficiency of the seller. Sometimes you get a seller who's really, really got a lot of corporate process, or who's really, really crummy at following up and getting things through ARIN, and you wait 6 weeks versus some sellers will do things in 2 days. You want to make sure you get an efficient seller. You want jurisdiction of the legal agreements to be right. We've never had a case go to court, touch wood, and we hope we never do. But we hope we never do. But you want to be able to have the court handy if you need to. And last but not least, you want to make sure that the legal content of the agreement is good.
My other question is around, I estimated at some point that there were probably 1 billion addresses, that IPv4 addresses, that were not actually being used by anything. That's sort of where I eyeballs the easy part of the market. Since I can't see how much address space has been traded but not registered in the WHOIS database, and I can't see what's locked up in futures and options contracts, can you all give us a sense for how large the remaining market is, or at least for any appreciable size of prefix? If there are 600 million addresses locked up in /24s, that's not necessarily a fantastic market for many of us. How's the market doing, and how much of it is left?
Go ahead, Sandra.
So I think it's a great question, Lee. And my view on that is that your number is probably accurate, but I think that the number of free addresses will be a function of price. So what you're seeing in the market right now is that several /8s in North America have freed up, and Marc, as well as anyone, knows which /8s are available since he represents a couple of them. And I think what we're seeing happening is that a couple have come to market with partial /8s, and they are saying, okay, we're done for now. We freed up as much as we're going to. And it's not until the price increases, to quote Elvis's prices, like you can see larger blocks going right now for around the $5 to $7 point per IP. It's not until you start to see those prices start to exceed $10 that you'll see supply start to increase. So perhaps the current quantity available is between 500,000 and 1 million IPs. When price gets above $10 for the larger blocks, I believe it will increase over the 1 billion mark. I'm sorry, I'm dropping 3 zeros.
Milton Mueller, Syracuse University. I missed the first. I don't know if anybody addressed the question of leasing. Is this an example of what Marc was talking about, where if you create barriers, people find workarounds, and how much of that is going on? Are you guys part of that market?
Because this is the tips and tricks sort of conversation, we've, based on 4 years in this market, when we first got into the market, we did some leasing, and we soon learned that most of the parties looking to lease blocks were looking to email on them. So we quickly stopped doing that because we learned very quickly that they were going to blacklist and block your IPs. So if you are a seller, I would recommend very strongly that you not lease your IPs. It's not a good thing to do, and we are no longer in the leasing business because of that. We would, however, do some of the stuff that Marc alluded to, which is, if you have a block and you want to put an option on your block, or you want to allow someone to use your block with, a lease back kind of arrangement, paid up front. We do that kind of thing, yes.
Hi, Martin Hannigan from Akamai. Serious market observer. Just a few points based on the conversation that we've had already. And very quickly, with regards to price points, I guess we'll have the IP number ice bucket challenge. I disagree with you. My data points, my own data points are $1 an address at this point, because there are much more sellers than buyers in the market. Second question is, and I think that if only one person can answer this, and it probably would apply to all, how much exclusivity do you guys have on address blocks? I get the feeling that there's pretty much none at this point, and that it's a free-for-all. And third question, and if each person can answer this just with a number, how many RFPs have you each seen? Thank you.
For exclusivity, just to know, are you the sole representative of the party
You
selling?
have a contractual relationship with the block seller that you and only you are representing the seller.
Okay. Are you exclusive? And then how many RFPs do you get?
Probably 90-10, 90 exclusive, 10 not. RFPs, how many have we seen? Probably 10?
Jack?
Yeah, I probably have seen the same RFPs as Sandra, so yeah, and almost
we've won them
always,
all.
we're almost,
We've all seen them, yeah.
One follow-up question for the panel. As brokers, do you folks occasionally find yourself on both the buyer and the seller's side?
We don't. We only represent, we disclose and we only represent one side of the transaction, and that's sellers.
Sandra, same?
I would agree, yeah.
Jack?
You can't eat both ends of the hot dog.
Question for the entire panel. There's a lot of address space where the authorized holder is no longer in existence or defunct or unreachable or whatnot. And do you have recommendations for how we can go, what we, ARIN, can do to make that address space available to the market?
Now, the panel on, are you dealing with someone who actually is the right party for the address block? How do you know? I guess to go to Lee's question, even if you know you're dealing with the person whose name matches, how do you know they're the party that actually is the legal successor of the block being sold?
And what do we do about the space where we can't
Well,
identify that chain?
Yeah, well, we
You know who's
typically-
the best at determining that? ARIN. And ultimately, there have been a couple of cases where we've ended up working with ARIN, because if ARIN agrees, then we know we have a transfer that's going to happen, and it's going to transfer the rights, title, and interest. But early in the process, when they come to you and say, we want to sell, and we're getting better at this as time goes on, because you learn to recognize the red flags. There are things like we had this is a ripe example, but we had an example in ripe region where it was an employee who was on the ripe database, and he was trying to transfer the IPs, and he owned the bank account, and he also was signing the APA. And in this situation, red flags were going up everywhere. So we asked him for an affidavit from the officers of the company, and he couldn't produce it. So, I mean, there are just certain things you look for where if it doesn't smell right, don't do it.
Ken West, Sprint. There's been a lot of talk about price transparency and not so much talk about time. And I would just like to add that knowing how long these transfers take, and I realize it's highly variable, would also help for internal planning and forecasting. Is there any comment, like, I understand this highly variable, but.
Let me ask a question of the panel. I'll generalize this. ARIN, right now, we report on transfers, and by the way, we do the minimal reporting on transfers. You actually have to go to the log to go find what Marc wants, who it went to, who it came from. All we put is an address block up there. We could do more complete. We could do that for you, as other people do. But my question is, what about the data that no one has? How long did it take? What was the price involved? Should we be asking that of transfer parties voluntarily? Should it be required by policy? Do you want some real transparency here from the RIRs? Comments? Sandra, the transaction times and more transparency in reporting?
So transaction times, I concur with what we've heard. They can be a week, they can be 2 months, they can be 6 months. More transparency, I think the issue is always with how much, as David said, how much the buyer and seller want to disclose. And as a broker, I don't think we particularly have any impediments to wanting to disclose more, but it always comes down to what the client wants, and they never want more disclosure. So what we like to do is to anonymously, if I can use that word, give as much information as we can without, violating our NDAs, and that's what we try to do.
So we've had a good panel. I want to let each panelist give 30-second closing remarks, and then we'll get you folks off to lunch. So Sandra.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to participate this morning, and enjoy your lunch.
Yep, thank you all the panelists, and David for his idea of this panel. Thank you, everyone.